Hello, Internet! Welcome to episode 336 of the Assorted Calibers podcast. The second ever podcast is a little bit for everyone. I'm Weer'd, and with me tonight, the greatest hostess in the known universe, all the multiverses, and a cookie, Aaron Paulette. How you doing, Aaron?
God has let me live another year, and I'm going to make it everyone's problem.
Hooray!
But I have to ask, Weer'd, what kind of cookie?
I think that's lady's choice. Aaron, what type of cookie would you pick?
To exist in? Because, I mean, you mentioned all the multiverse and a cookie.
Yes. It's actually a joke from a good friend of mine. He called himself the master the master of the world, the universe, and a cookie.
Okay. I'm just going to go with a classic, and I'm going to say Girl Scout Thin Mints.
Ooh, yeah. You know how I feel about those things.
I mean, I don't know, but I imagine if you're like the rest of us, it's basically crack and cookie shape.
I'm the exact opposite. I love chocolate, I love mint, and never should the twain meet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the mint and chocolate together is just a flavor combination that I do not like. And yes, everybody who's listening right now is going, "What's going on?" Yes, I know I'm wrong.
Yep. You're allowed to be.
Yeah, it's trust me. It's one of those things of when you hear, the whole thing is saying like everybody in the world's a jerk. Well, think about that for a second. Or I'm right and the whole world is wrong. Think about that for a second. No. The whole world thinks that Thin Mints are like the greatest of the Girl Scout cookies. I'm not a huge fan of Girl Scout cookies. If I'm going for the Samoas. Those are my jam. And all that, though, in the case of inexpensive packaged cookies, I found at my grocery store, and they had them. They must be getting close to the end of date because they had them in the clearance bin for like next to nothing. My grocery store it was like these cookies that were like, it was like a vanilla wafer with a lump of marshmallow on top, and they covered the whole thing with chocolate, and they are all gone now. They are all gone.
I think we've all heard the apocryphal story of the Girl Scout who set up her cookie booth, quote unquote, right outside of a weed dispensary and made bank.
and she is going to middle school in her helicopter.
It's like, you young lady have a future in marketing or sales or both.
Look, face it, you want some cookies right now. If you don't want the cookies right now, you know how much you'll want these cookies later. And you won't be able to drive and come get them later. So maybe you should get them now. And maybe you should get a few. I might not be here tomorrow.
So how about you, Weer'd? Are you going to be here tomorrow?
I think so. Podcast isn't going to edit itself.
Well, that was me throwing to you because normally I ask how you're doing.
I'm doing well. We've just switched for daylight savings time, and my wife has just got home from England, and so it's we are all experiencing environmental trauma. But
yeah, look, I don't much care. I mean, because I'm a night person, I would prefer to have the extra hour of daylight in the evening. But you know what? I could go either way. I just want our nation to pick one and stick with it. That's all I ask.
I am in the firm. Like local radio station throws up a poll every show and all that, and it was one of those like, what would you like? Would you like to keep us in daylight savings time, keep us in standard time, or keep the time change? And it's one of those like, yeah, I don't there's no difference with the other two. It's not when the sun goes up and when the sun goes down. It's the fact that we change the clocks.
Mm-hmm.
and we do it twice a year.
Did any weirdo vote for keeping the time change in those polls?
I don't remember. I think in that case, I think there was like a fistful of mutants that did that, but also there are generally like a few trolls that show up for the polls anyway. So
a fistful of mutants. I mean, I'm envisioning a punk band based off of like, well, I don't know if it would be punk or whatever, but like weird rockabilly sort of thing where you take the Western, outlaw Josie Wales, and then you like make him green and antennae and maybe like a third eye. And so you take the vaguely Western music and then you punk it into some kind of rockabilly.
So, Aaron, that genre already exists and it is known as psychobilly.
Well, there you go. A Fistful of Mutants is your psychobilly band name.
Yes, you may be. The term was coined by the Texas group Reverend Horton Heat. Psychobilly Freakout being the epitomable song.
The what song?
Just the one that I guess that's not the right.
I didn't fully understand what you said. What word did you say?
I said epitomable, meaning the epitome of. It might not be a right word. I think I heard Monty Python say it once, and they might have been making fun of it. I took it seriously.
Okay.
Moving on.
I think you perhaps mean eponymous.
Ooh, maybe. I like that one. I will get very excited and promptly forget about it, only to embarrass myself again.
So yeah. Eponymous, giving their name to something.
Mm-hmm.
And it's from eponym, which is a person after whom a discovery, invention, place, etc. is named.
I like it. Well, thank you, Aaron.
You're welcome. So I don't know why you put this first topic up here. But I'm pretty sure it's something you don't like because it involves your home state and firearms licenses. Yeah,
I just wanted to put it up since I'm going to be throwing a little bit of shade and just like my weird audio fix. If I'm going to call somebody dishonest or a liar, I'm not going to be a jerk and just tell people to take my word for it. I was unable to find, and I didn't feel like digging through the actual like written law for the Massachusetts firearms law, but I remember, and they may have changed it in the recent revision of the laws that hasn't fully come into place and effect and all that. But on this page of mass.gov, it says applying for a Massachusetts firearm permit. It says the non-resident licensing process may take up to 90 days. It says resident firearm license processing may take up to 60 days.
I think this is where you cough and utter your vulgar disagreement.
So I just got my license renewal. Your license expires on your birthday, which those who have been following along know my birthday on Facebook is actually not a fake birthday. A lot of people think it is because my name on Facebook is a fake name, but the birthday is real. I was born on January 1st. So on January 1st, my permit expired. And I have been going through my life in Massachusetts with an expired permit in a grace period. You have 90 days after it expires, so long as your application is in the system and you have neither been approved nor denied. You can still, they technically can't arrest you and take you to prison for possessing guns without a license.
Technically.
Yeah. I have never had a police officer ask me to see my permit ever. So there's that. And I have never attempted to buy a firearm while my permit was in the grace period. So I don't know exactly how that works. I tend to fly a little low and limit my range trips and limit when I'm carrying and all that, because I do the math, and at this point in time, the state is more dangerous than most things. And so, but my license finally came back in, and I actually straight up counted the days that it took for my license to be renewed. And as I mentioned in the link that's in the show notes, it says that resident permits may take up to 60 days to process. Non-residents may take up to 90 days. And of course, I am a resident of the state of Massachusetts. And it took them 97 days. I believe, and it may not be the law anymore, but it did say that it was originally 30 business days was the actual law, and the state had to issue me a denial or approval in that time frame. That has never been observed. Actually, my very, very first permit actually came in like exactly 30 days. I remember I dropped it in the mail, and then I just went out to sea and like expected to come back and maybe eventually get it in. And when I came back, it was one of those, oh yeah, the permit's here. Okay. Wow. That was faster than I thought. So, but, yeah, it's a long time, and it really, really sucks because it's your permit to own and your permit to buy guns and all that. And so, in other news, people have been sending me, hey, I found this gun that you might think is really cool. And I'm like, yes, I do think that's cool. And, but people have sent me some stuff that I think is really, really cool, but I don't know if it's worth the trouble of getting a hold of. But David today has sent me a picture of a gun from his gun shop. And I think that one needs to be mine.
So I'm looking at this under the fees, and it mentions a firearms identification card, which is wholly separate from a license to carry.
Correct. It is not a license to carry. That is your 18 to 20 permit, or your I'm a gun owner but permit. The Elmer Fudd, I have my bolt action rifle or my double barreled shotgun, and that's all I need. I don't need any of them terrorist weapons permit.
Okay.
Essentially, it allows you that you can only have long guns. They can only be low capacity long guns, and it does not provide its only ownership and buying ammunition. I believe there's debate on whether it would be easy to get traditionally handgun ammo on that permit. I think some people, some gun shops will actually deny you if you have a lever action rifle. They will deny you getting a box of 357 Magnum because that's handgun ammunition and you have an FID. It's very stupid, but at least we have a high crime rate.
Okay. I was wondering if this was like how Illinois does it, where you have to have a FOID before you could even get a concealed carry license.
Nope.
And so I wondered if Massachusetts was trying to wring more money out of you.
No. I've never had a FOID card. So it's an FID here, but yeah, I've never had one of those because I was over the age of 21 when I first moved to Massachusetts. And so, yeah, I just went straight to that case in LTCA. Back when we had the letter designations of A through D for permits. There used to be that many permits. Now there's just 2.
You really want to tell me what those are, don't you?
I mean, if you wanted to hear them really quickly, the D was just pepper spray only. C is that FID, so just the low capacity long guns. B rarely existed. I think that was like Boston specifically would give you that one back in the day, and it was you could own, I think it was low capacity long guns and handguns and no carry, even though it says license to carry. And then A was your carry permit, though there is a field on it that says restrictions. And so my first LTC had target and hunting only, which meant that I was not allowed to conceal carry on that permit. And that was just a per town thing. If your town was a jerk, they would issue you a restricted permit and be like, we don't really want the smoke of just telling you no, but so we will give you the most worthless permit we can manage. And so and actually, interestingly enough, the my new permit it no longer has the one that I just replaced actually still said Class A license, even though it was issued like several years after the letter system was gone, but it took them a little while. And so on a similar fashion, NYSERPA v. Bruin got rid of the restrictions category in the licenses. So I believe all LTCs issued in Massachusetts now are restrictions none, but they do say restrictions none. So fun times. Don't go to Massachusetts.
Well, the only reason I would go to Massachusetts would be to visit you.
Yes. And you are welcome anytime, Aaron.
Although, I don't know, you go to Florida and you don't tell me until it's too late, so...
I did tell you that I was going to Florida. Let's not fight in front of the kids, Aaron. All right, moving on. This article, I stumbled across. I'm trying to remember who sent this to me, but I saw this, and in my usual fashion, it's a Substack, and it's talking about an article from the New York Times, and I was just kind of skimming it through, and I'm like, look, I'm not going to read their opinion first. First, I want to read the article. So I clicked on the on the article, and they're nice enough to supply it in an archive format because the New York Times puts most stuff behind the paywall. And it's talking about this gun shop rooftop defense and how it's, it caters to gun supplies, and they're friendly to LGBT gun shops. And I'm just reading this, and I'm like, yeah, this is that's a nice little article. It's in the show notes, and go check it out. But I'm just like, what am I missing here? And they made an amazing point. Is they say right here, here are some things that were not mentioned in the article: mass shootings, the word assault, the concept of gun control, and anything whatsoever about politics. And they go on to say, I got to just directly cite their analogy. In other topics, that wouldn't be a surprise. A profile of the Hershey Company wouldn't focus on what the American Dental Association thinks. And it was really a great point of saying that, like, this was just a really nice, even-handed article by the New York Times on a gun shop. And that's shocking. And so I don't know what to make. If I want to read into it and say that times are changing, and possibly because gun ownership is becoming even more ubiquitous, and it's not just things that are owned by people that those who work for the New York Times don't like. But it is also interesting to see there aren't that many things out there where when they're going to talk about it, they're specifically going to talk to only people who hate the thing that they're writing about. And we've also talked about how we had Steve Diedelbach as the ATF director, and he opened.
You didn't call him Beeplesneets.
Yes, Steve Beeplesneets. And we've had Beeplesneets as the ATF director, and he openly dislikes guns and gun owners, and he's been very open about it. And he doesn't want gun shops to. His agency is in charge of licensing gun shops, and he would rather they didn't. Like, who does that? And so it would be like, the head of an automotive company is one of those like really obnoxious people that only rides the bike and looks down your nose for using an internal combustion engine. I don't know. I hope we see a lot more of that. We've certainly seen, we detailed some even-handed articles talking about, again, the rise of we'll just say non-traditional firearm owners, though they're rapidly becoming traditional firearms owners. So that term's quickly getting outdated, but the stereotypical white American conservative male for firearm owners is starting to become a minority, and God bless it. The more the merrier here. Surely we must hang together lest we hang separately, as Ben Franklin said. So I don't know. Hopefully this will be an ongoing trend, and it was just a really great little Substack, and so I thought I'd share that with people.
Yeah, I want to quote something from that article.
Please.
And the writer says, there are two reasons it's encouraging to see all this from the New York Times. One, They, the New York Times, realized they had a gap and they chose to fix it. The fact that they made that choice suggests a broader cultural shift. Gun rights win when people learn about guns. We don't need favoritism or cheerleaders. We just need people to see the facts in a neutral setting, and the rest will take care of itself. And I think that's great. And kudos to the New York Times for not only doing this, for realizing they had a gap, but also for hiring the writer Thomas Gibbons Neff for the Gun Beat. And according to the Substack, Thomas Gibbons Neff knows about guns and wants to address the topic like he would any other. So he's not coming at it from the knee-jerk political position of guns bad. He's approaching it impartially, and that's all we need.
Yeah, it's I like the direction these things are going. It does appear that the tide is shifting. So on to another topic, which I don't think is really a tide shift. This is really more of things are looking good, but we need to keep an eye on this, which is there is currently, I don't know if they'll have ruled on this by the time the show is published, but they'll probably be ruling pretty soon after that. But there's that Smith & Wesson is actually speaking before the Supreme Court. And they are speaking in their defense against a lawsuit against Mexico, who is saying that Smith & Wesson, in part, has essentially been fueling cartel gun violence by allowing arms to filter into Mexico. And from
Project Gunwalker says what?
Yeah, well, and that's what I want to get into. I have some old blog posts in here, but yeah, it does appear from all the accounts of those who are directly following the courts that even the anti-gun justices aren't really showing a whole lot of warmth towards the Mexican attorneys, and so this is definitely going to be an interesting one. And one thing that I haven't heard anything about for the people covering this, but but it'll be interesting to see what sort of evidence Mexico may have that we are allowing guns to proliferate into Mexico, because back when Fast and Furious was going on, and that was the big thing, talking about 90% of the guns Mexico sends to us to trace are traced back to U.S. gun dealers, and we were noting that wait, that's kind of like the first world countries not at war have the highest rate of gun. America has the highest rate of gun violence. Like, wait, why are you saying all that stuff first? Because you're trying to make the numbers friendly. And so the statement is that Mexico seizes a bunch of guns every year that they don't feel the need to send back to the States. So I have some links to some blog posts from Third Power from Days of Our Trailers, a little blast from the past, from the golden age of gun blogging. And he figured out how many guns were seized by the Mexican authorities versus how many he was sending to the ATF for tracing, and then couple that with the information that we have on Operation Fast and Furious, and the number is within striking distance of at the time that we were sending guns across the border and the Mexicans were sending guns back to us for tracing. I mean, maybe there were different guns and some of the Fast and Furious guns weren't turning back up, but it is pretty interesting that it was like roughly 2,000 guns that the Mexicans were sending back to us to trace, going, hey, how did these guns get here? And that happens to be the same number that we were illegally sending across the border in a very, very shady government operation. And furthermore, the question is, what about all those other guns? Roughly 80% of the guns that the Mexican authorities seize from the cartels, they don't send back to the United States. Why not? Because because they know where those guns came from, because they probably did come from the United States because they bought them from people like Smith & Wesson and SIG and that, because that's how they arm their military, and they have a massive desertion rate, and those people go over to the cartels, and the cartels pay them very, very well for stealing military hardware to help arm the cartels. And so, yeah, this is the statement that U.S. guns are arming the Mexican cartels. It's not completely false. I guarantee there are some U.S. guns that are somehow making their way into the hands of cartels, either through, illegal buyers and mules, or through people that are, trading guns for drugs or other things. But when you're stealing guns directly from the Mexican military or the Mexican police, why do you want the civilian guns?
Well, I mean, I'm really tempted to make the joke about how mil-spec is crap and you want the higher quality civilian version. But I also know you're talking about fun things like the giggle switch.
Yes.
So really, what we need is a civilian version of a machine gun, because that would be the best of both.
That would be the best of both. So let's get rid of at least the Hughes Amendment, but maybe just the NFA entirely, and that way we can. I mean, I have certainly shot several civilian machine guns thanks to people with SOTs. They're very nice.
I'm just okay. I understand this is how it works, and the Supreme Court has to give permission for a foreign government to sue us. It just seems very strange that we actually have this process as opposed to just saying no.
Well, this is kind of the same grounds as what Lucky Gunner did when the Brady campaign was suing them. Is they kind of had the pre-trial hearing where they presented the Prevention of Law, the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act, and stated that this was a frivolous lawsuit, and they asked for it to be dismissed. And the judge looked at the evidence and said, "You know what? You're absolutely right. This is a frivolous lawsuit. It is dismissed. You pay the attorney's fees, and this can never go back to court again." And the Brady campaign quickly abandoned the Phillips family. They got them a lawyer, they got them there and all that. And when it was time for them to lose, suddenly they were all alone. And they said, "No, we're declaring bankruptcy. Goodbye." After all their assets had disappeared, so they didn't have anything to declare bankruptcy on. How amazing! If only they could have predicted that.
Again, I understand it's the process, but to have this whole rigmarole where we, as a country, through the government, decide whether or not we're going to permit a foreign country to sue us, it's to me, it's like me walking up and saying, "Hi, I'd like to have a fight with you. May I hit you in the face?" And most people would say no, because they don't want to get hit.
I mean,
and so you're banking on the fact that you're going to find someone who is either feeling fighty and wants to hit back, or is feeling masochistic and wants to be punished.
The only thing I will say is that Mexico is our friend. We can say all the things we can about the cartels and their gun laws and all that stuff, but it is a friendly nation. It is a nation that we routinely trade with. It is a nation that has a massive tourist industry, and Americans greatly enjoy taking trips to Mexico for leisure and all of that. And so I just see this as a very, very nice formality of, look, we'll hear you out. It sounds like, but again, keep your eyes peeled, because if this doesn't go in our favor, which it looks like it will, but weirder things have happened, and that they will essentially just say, no, you can't do that. And hopefully they'll knock this the hell off.
Well, as has been pointed out here and elsewhere, it isn't that American guns were in Mexico. It's the fact that, well, okay, if guns are used in crime, that is a misuse of the gun. And you shouldn't, I'd like to say can't, but unfortunately in this world you can, you shouldn't be able to sue the manufacturer of any item because it is deliberately misused. When someone drinks and drives and commits vehicular homicide, you do not sue the car manufacturer, and you do not sue the distiller of the alcohol. You sue the person who drank and then drove irresponsibly and killed people.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, I understand how we got here. It's from previous administrations wanting to punish the gun industry. I do get that. But then there's the whole business of not only did the ATF do this, but the ATF pressured firearm stores to make these shady and straw purchases. And I've lost count of how many times I saw a gun store owner saying, yeah, this looks really suspicious. We called it in, and we were told to give it a green light. Because, how can the guns walk across the border if the FFLs decide, you're shady, this is a straw purchase, I'm not going to sell to you?
I believe the exact words were, because we heard multiple people say this, is that, like, somebody came in speaking broken English and was asking to buy AKs by the crate, and they turned around and said, okay, yeah, hold on a second. And they essentially told the employee to go to stall them as long as they could, and then went and called the ATF and said, "Yeah, this guy's, is acting really shifty. Can you do something?" And they literally said, "Let the purchase go through. We're aware. Let the purchase go through, or you won't have a license anymore." Hope you like operating a gun shop, because if you don't let that go, if you don't let this shady transaction go through, you won't have a gun shop anymore.
I do wonder how many of those gun shops were then shut down by the ATF for the flimsiest of infractions.
Huh. Oh gosh. Now that's a rabbit hole right there. All right, I've got one last story, and actually I don't know if you saw it because I only put it in one place on the show notes, but I could take the driver's seat on it anyway. This is just another story to watch, which was, we talked about it a few years ago, how New Mexico's governor essentially made it illegal to conceal carry in, I think she was essentially putting it in like the entire county that like Albuquerque was in.
Yeah, if I recall correctly, she banned them throughout the entire city. And there was such outcry that I don't know if they tried to impeach her and failed, or if it just never got off the ground. But there was a lot of serious talk about impeaching her for, I don't know what the proper term is, but, a dereliction of duty, because she wasn't upholding her oath of office. And I also recall that the Attorney General of the entire state resigned in disgust rather than be part of that.
Yes, you are correct. They definitely attempted to have her recalled. It obviously didn't take. I don't know what the extent of it was. Where it went off the rails. But yeah, you're absolutely right. They did try to get her recalled. They were unsuccessful. She did back off on the the ruling and changed it to just parks and playgrounds. It sounds like a federal judge struck down the blanket ban, and so now it's just parks and playgrounds. And so it was still being challenged with the Supreme Court, and it was being challenged on essentially power and authority grounds, not on Second Amendment grounds, but essentially saying that she declared it to be a public health emergency, and The argument was, and the dissenting judges, because it was a split decision, the dissenting judges essentially said you can't just declare anything a public health emergency. But the majority of the judges ruled that, oh yeah, no, that sounds perfectly reasonable. So we will see where this goes. Since it's a split decision, I have to imagine that they're going to go for a higher court appeal, and we will see what happens with that. But also, as as I've been saying on pretty much every episode of the Assorted Calibers podcast, I'm sick of waiting on and listening to the courts. The courts are great. The courts are good. But that's not the only tool in our toolbox. Why don't we pass some legislation? And so I don't know about the politics of New Mexico. I know it's been a very, very blue state. Again, blue does not.
It's very anti-gun.
Yeah. It has been, very, very anti-gun and gotten more so and more so. It was one of those. When I first started getting into guns, it was one of those states that was, fairly purple and but friendly with guns, and now essentially blue states that are friendly to guns is really not a thing that we do anymore, which should be like that. There's no reason why you can't be a liberal state and not also support the right of your people to keep and bear arms. And hopefully the higher courts will see the right of it, because literally if this is where it ends, it's essentially saying that at least in New Mexico, a governor can pretty much just pull whatever they want out of their rear and declare it an emergency, and then declare whatever they want to be the solution to that emergency. Because certainly the idea of, it's gun violence, and so therefore I'm going to make it so that concealed carry holders can't carry their guns. Well, first up, we know from the fact that, concealed carry permits need to be revoked by courts, from malfeasance. And it's big news if somebody with a concealed carry permit actually, commits a crime or kills somebody. And it's talked about the times when it happens. But it's really not something that happens very often at all. Certainly there was I think it was I'm forgetting for which group, but one of the anti-gun groups had a list called Concealed Carry Killers. And it was the most ghoulish list ever, because it had people who had taken their own lives who happened to have concealed carry permits. And it had people who had defended themselves with their concealed firearm, were charged with murder, and then later acquitted. But they didn't bother counting the acquit. They had a concealed carry permit and they killed somebody.
That would be the Violence Policy Center.
That's right. Yep. And so, yeah, those so those jerks had that list. And again, concealed carry permit holders are so safe that they had to just lie in the most slimy way possible. And so the idea that, we have a public health crisis, and again, do we? Is this a public health crisis? That's doubtful. And the solution is to make concealed carry illegal in the state. Well, it was never a problem to begin with. Why is this going to solve this public health crisis? So this is not just their statement on just the governmental powers idea is a really big statement, because not only can they do this to go after guns, they could do this to go after anything. All right. Well, in more positive news, North Carolina is again attempting to pass constitutional carry. And so I decided to talk with John Richardson about how this is progressing. Well, I am pleased to welcome back to the show, longtime friend of the show, John Richardson. How you doing, John?
I'm doing well, Weer'd. Doing good.
So, all right. I just recently heard some news. Actually, it was I think Cam and Company was talking about it just the other day, talking about how constitutional carry is trying again to come back to North Carolina, and there's still some more drama. And I'm like, you know what? I had John on a while back when the NRA unfortunately torpedoed constitutional carry. So I thought I would ask you, what's going on with constitutional carry in North Carolina, John?
Well, bills have been introduced in both the House and the Senate. It was one of the early bills. I mean, in the House, it was House Bill 5. So, and in the Senate, it's House Bill 50 or Senate Bill 50. The guy who introduced it before, Representative Keith Kidwell of Chocowinity, one of those great North Carolina names.
Well, what part of the state is that in? I've never even heard of that.
Way down east.
Okay. You guys have it down east there too? Cool.
Oh, yeah. He's actually like Dare County, Outer Banks, and inland from there. And the bill is a cleaner bill than it was in 2023 in the sense that it does not have a requirement that you take a class in the use of defensive force or deadly force. Now it just says if you basically aren't a crook, you're not on the run from the law, whatever, you're 18 years of age and not otherwise prohibited, you can carry a handgun concealed. Now we already have open carry as a constitutional right in North Carolina and have since 1922. So that's open carry is not on this is only, I guess the best way to call it is permitless concealed carry.
Mm-hmm.
What I see is really an advantage for it this year, and in terms of its passage, is that the Senate bill is co-sponsored by the Senate President Pro Tem Phil Berger, who is the GOP leader in the state Senate. And last time he was like, yeah, okay, we've passed enough gun bills. We don't need to consider anything else. Having him on board is a huge plus. The one thing that, there was some guy from out west, Washington State, I think, who was like, there's something about alcohol in it. In North Carolina, you could never carry concealed if you had 1 drop of alcohol in you. You can't have alcohol in your blood. You can't drink if you're carrying concealed under our permit. Big deal. I mean, we know that. So it has that in the bill, and that's no change. The other thing is that if you're stopped by a police officer, you have to have ID, and you have to declare that you are carrying concealed. We have to do it with our concealed handgun permit anyway. We have a duty to notify. So that's not a change. The only difference is you're not paying $85 for every 5 years and giving your fingerprints and going through a class and all the rest of the stuff. It is treated as a constitutional right.
And now I'm trying to remember, you guys got rid of the pistol purchase permit, correct?
We did.
Yes.
In 2023, we finally got rid of that. One issue that has come up regarding constitutional carry is that there is an exception under the gun-free school zone federal law that if you have a concealed carry permit, you're okay being within 1,000 feet of a school. So if you're carrying constitutionally, I'm not sure how that's going to impact you. You may be prohibited from being in certain areas.
That is certainly something that's been bandied about by many legal scholars, but it's also something that hasn't been challenged at all. And it's one of those, you hear about letter of the law, spirit of the law, and it was never, I don't think there was ever a spirit of the law, that the idea of someone that was legally carrying to get jammed up for walking within 1,000 feet of a school, which
right
in itself is pretty ridiculous, especially since I grew up within 1,000 feet of a school. My school was right across the street from my house growing up. And, so there's a lot of, there's a lot of gray area that goes on with, that hasn't really been challenged and looked into. And even then, I note that I grew up in Maine, and Maine, much like North Carolina, you've never needed a permit to open carry. And there were people, it wasn't super common growing up, but there absolutely were people who didn't trust or didn't want to bother with the government permission slip, and would just simply make sure to carry openly when they were carrying a handgun, and that was perfectly legal, and you just had to abide by all the rules that people that had the concealed carry permits would have to abide by. But yeah, I've never seen any instance where the Gun-Free School Zone Act was being tapped for someone open carrying without a permit near a school, which is again super easy to do, especially if you're in an urban area, and that even means urban for Maine or rural North Carolina.
Exactly. I mean, you can be within 1,000 feet of school, and you say, well, how can that be? I mean, it takes me a mile drive to get to the school. Well, it's just over the hill, but you can't get there from here. Mm-hmm. You're still officially within that 1,000 feet. In terms of the bill passage, I think it stands I think the bills will pass both houses. Where there will be an issue is that in the state Senate, we're good. The Republicans have a supermajority. They'll crack the whip. Every Republican would stand for it in terms of a veto. We have a new Democratic governor who is, just as anti-gun as the previous governor. Problem is going to be the state house, where we're one off from a supermajority. So you're going to have either a couple of Democrats take a walk that day, or one Democrat cross over to vote for it. What happened last time? Well, what happened when we passed getting rid of the pistol purchase permit? A couple of Democrats were out, and one caught so much grief. And she had long COVID, was in the hospital, had gone in for treatment. They knew she was going in for treatment. The bill was called. The override was called that time. They treated her so horribly, she became a Republican.
Wow.
And definitely voted for the anything coming after that to override the governor's veto, she voted straight Republican line. So how you treat somebody can come back and bite you.
So that leads me to a kind of a question of, and this is kind of my perennial politics and guns, hobby horse is, as we like to say in the Assorted Calibers podcast, that there's nothing partisan about the Second Amendment. There may be political divides, on, gun laws, gun control laws, and all of that, but that's a choice, not really a platform consideration. And North Carolina is, I think, still considered a swing state.
Yes.
Yeah, and you have a Democrat governor, so I think you guys went for Trump in this last election, correct?
We voted for Trump, but then, even though I like him a lot, Mark Robinson was a millstone around the neck of many Democratic candidates, so we lost the governor, lieutenant governor, and more importantly, attorney general. And we may lose. It's still in court. We may lose also, or the Democrats get to retain a Supreme Court seat.
Okay. Wow. So yeah, but that outlines it beautifully on the fact that the state went red for the for the president, but went blue for everything else. So that's the definition of a swing state right there. And,
absolutely. And
also North Carolina is while you guys have the Research Triangle and places like that and Charlotte, it's still a pretty rural state. And so also gun ownership is very, very high there. So I am wondering if there is going to be like places like, North Carolina and Georgia and other places like that. I think it's going to be where we're going to see, possibly Maine is where we may start seeing Vermont pro-gun Democrats start showing up in this new wave that I am predicting, but have yet to see.
We used to have that in North Carolina.
Oh, absolutely. I mentioned when I talk about the 1994 assault weapons ban, there was a pretty decent split on it was bipartisan on both sides. There were Democrats that voted against the 94 assault weapons ban, and there were Republicans that voted for it. It was very much a nonpartisan bill. Just because it was signed by Bill Clinton doesn't make it purely a Democrat,
right?
A Democrat affair. So yeah, gun policies used to be bipartisan, both pro and against. Back not that long ago, back in the 90s. It's oldies music territory, but
I think what's happened in North Carolina that, at least in the State House, General Assembly, the pro-gun Democrats eventually got pushed out in the primaries as not being left enough. There are still moderate Democrats, but a good part of the party has been taken over strongly, and the money comes from the left. It's kind of like what you're seeing nationally. And when you get to the large urban centers, the Wake County, which is Raleigh, Mecklenburg County, Charlotte, and then the Piedmont Triad, and of course Asheville, which has gone beyond the pale, the politics have gone harder left than before.
Mm-hmm.
And they made, in this election, past election, it really came down to, Mark Robinson's going to take away your right for an abortion. That's had some repercussions.
Yeah. So the question I have is, in your crystal ball, John, as a resident, a longtime resident of North Carolina, could you see a potential of maybe not necessarily Democrats defecting and voting for this, but possibly when it comes to, say, a veto override is actually the probably the more significant issue if it comes down to that, of certain Democrats getting a little sand in their eyes or having to step out to the restroom at the time of the vote being called just to allow the majority to happen on a technicality?
That's going to be the best case scenario. It really will be. There's already, I know, one Democrat in the High Point area who's caught a lot of grief, and he's African American. So I don't think he would switch parties, but he certainly could take a walk. And you just need one more to do that, and you would have your 2/3 majority if the Republicans all show up and all vote the party line. And of course, they will be whipped to vote the party line because they want to override the governor and show their power. So they'll do, even if they don't exactly like the bill, they will vote for the bill.
Mm-hmm.
They might not vote for it in the second reading, but they'll be there for the third reading and they'll be there for an override. They will stick together. Roy Cooper, the previous governor, had vetoed so much stuff, but once that one Democrat became a Republican, they overrode a lot of vetoes, and that's the only time in 8 years he had been overridden in vetoes.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Well, we will all be pulling for you here in Second Amendment land, and again, also looking for some of those secondary political markers of potentially going back to a time where the Second Amendment is no longer such a divided partisan issue.
I agree.
So why don't we, before we go out, I would be remiss to say that ask you to tell people, well, where can people find more of you, and possibly you might be running for a position as well.
Exactly. I am a candidate for the NRA Board of Directors. I am on the ballot both by the nominating committee, which was kind of a shocker to me, as well as by petition. Indeed, I made the New York trial in an affidavit that said, when they were saying how they had opened up nominations, they had even nominated John Richardson of No Lawyers, Only Guns and Money, a well-known critic, and he was nominated. I'm like, okay.
I hadn't heard that. That's awesome.
So yes, I have made the New York trial, but you could go to my blog, onlygunsandmoney.com. And if you want to know more about the NRA 2.0 candidates, the reform candidates, go to electanewnra.com.
Awesome. And I will put links to that in the show notes. Thank you so much for coming on, John.
Thanks so much for having me, Weer'd.
So, Weer'd, whatever happened to the Blue Dog Democrats? I mean, I'm pretty sure that they're an extinct species now.
It does appear that way. I mean, it was I was hoping the last of the last of that was Governor Janet Mills up in Maine, who was a very, very blue, very liberal governor. But when the Lewiston shooting happened and there was all these knee-jerk bills of, though we got to ban everything, she said, hold on, let's sit down and think about this, before we take any action. And unfortunately, her thinking about it was, no, we need to ban guns, but just we need to do it this way. So, yeah, I don't know what's happened. Again, I hope to see through this if John is correct, and I've heard other people say it as well, that this is going to pass through all the chambers and get to the governor's desk. It'd be really, really cool if the governor either signed it or I don't know. I don't know if I believe that they can do a process where they just don't sign it, but leave it on their desk long enough without vetoing it that it'll just become law naturally, and that way he can go, oh, I didn't sign it, but I also didn't stop it. But if it does come down to it, North Carolina, of course, has the rule where it's when a vote's cast, the number of people that are actually on the floor is how you determine a majority. And so in the past, they have done things like certain people who were opposed to the law, but maybe not as opposed, went and took a powder break right before the vote was called. And so the oppositional party did win, but it didn't involve them crossing the aisle. So it will be interesting to watch. Maybe there will be some. The Blue Dog Democrat, I think, is just extinct just because that is an older term, but I'm hoping that a new breed of Democrat comes out, which is the liberal pro-gun Democrat.
Well, I mean, just so long as they're pro-Second Amendment, that's fine. I only mentioned the Blue Dogs because they were the only Democratic bloc that was actually pro-Second Amendment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
they seem to have disappeared in like the past 10, 15 years.
Yeah, and as I mentioned with John, the 1990 go look the roll call. You can find the roll call for the 1994 assault weapons ban online, and you will see that there isn't really any trend line on which side is supporting it. You know, there might be a few more Democrats than there were Republicans that supported it, but there was a ton of Republicans that voted for it as well, and there was a ton of Democrats that voted against it. So it was very, very nonpartisan. It was just split up between, I'm sure it was more of a urban versus rural split overall. But and even now the urban gun owners are more plentiful, and just by population density alone likely outnumber the rural gun owners. So the times are changing as far as how the electorate is shaped. The question is, will the representation of that electorate change?
Yeah, between COVID and all the unrest and uncertainty that happened then, and then the election of Trump, a lot of people who were anti-gun, they may not necessarily be pro-gun, but they have been rethinking their stance on whether or not they should have one.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess I'm looking for the silver lining. You know, this was a good thing that came as a result of COVID. Yeah. So, you know, maybe if as a result of all these things, we can change the political landscape as it applies to, well, not to the right, because the right is still there, but in regards to the people who choose to exercise that right, then maybe it'll have been worth. I mean, no, not really, but at least something good will have come out of it, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, we've got some pretty good Supreme Court rulings. Hopefully soon we will have one like on assault weapons and magazine bans, because that's the other big one, you know, maybe a quick follow-up or something going on to say, no, Nice Serpa said you can't mess around with carry permits. Stop doing it. And And then on top of that, you've got the majority of states are constitutional carry. You don't need a permit to carry a gun in that state. And hopefully North Carolina will soon join those ranks. And so just all of that things, just kind of a quick uniting of maybe we just don't need to worry about this crap anymore. Don't worry about having permits. Don't worry about what guns you can own. Behave yourself with them. That's when laws take effect. Soon as you're bothering somebody with a gun, now that's when we can use the laws. But if you're not bothering anybody, who cares? And we'll just argue about healthcare and abortion and trans people.
Yeah, you're really not selling me.
Let's just move on. Oh, and by the way, the John mentioned video that was kind of a little bit off the rails on it. That was Washington gun law William Kirk. He's actually a friend of the show. I need to actually have him on at some point. I got to get off my button and reach out to him. I had missed the video when he first put it out, and so I watched it just this morning. And John's right. He just, the stuff that he was upset about is probably Washington's a northern state, and it seems like a lot of the northern states are way less restrictive on how carry works and all of that, and versus the southern states where you have a lot of the really, really as someone who grew up in New England and live in New England, it just seems strange on you can't carry in a church. You can't carry it, like if there's a public function, you can't carry there, and all that. That's like a very southern thing. And in the case, the big one that he's talking about is that the consumption of alcohol you're not allowed to drink while you're carrying a firearm in North Carolina, explicitly stated in the law. And they're just essentially now saying the law, just you carrying, it applies the same as if you had a permit or if you don't with this permitless carry. Like, it's a great law. And even if it wasn't as good as it was, we still got to embrace what the anti-gunners do to us, which is any step in the right direction is a good step, and support it. We had the Bipartisan Safers Community Act, which in itself was pretty toothless and pretty feckless, but they did gain some grounds in gun control on us, and that is some tools that they can use against us. So, don't knock it. Anything we can do to get in the right direction. If it's not perfect, you can fix it later.
Yeah, Florida has a rule like that where you can't drink alcohol while carrying a concealed weapon. And one of the things that I would like to do, and it's not likely to happen anytime soon, but I would love to have a carve-out set into the law and call it, the designated defender. And we treat it exactly like driving a car. Because the issue isn't the alcohol, the issue is the impairment. And just like you can drink and then drive, so long as your blood alcohol is below a certain limit, the same should be for firearm owners. As long as you are not legally intoxicated, you can drink alcohol while carrying a gun. Now, most responsible gun owners still won't, but right now in Florida, we've got this stupid rule where you can't even go into a bar when you're carrying.
Yeah, that was the point I was going to get into, is that Florida has that weird bit where you can't go into a bar, and if you go into like a restaurant that has a bar area, you can go into the restaurant where the tables are, but you can't sit at the bar and even take a meal with a soda. Even if you're stone cold sober, you cannot legally enter a bar while carrying. That's dumb. I remember when I was one time when I was down in North Carolina, we ordered a pizza from a restaurant that was near the house we were staying at, and I walked across the street, and when I got there, it wasn't ready yet, and so I sat down at the bar, and And I wasn't carrying at the time, so, and this was North Carolina, so I was not allowed to drink when I was carrying, but I wasn't carrying. So I just said, you know what? While I'm here, why don't you get me a martini? And had myself a very nice martini while I was waiting for my pizza to be done. But the idea of if that was Florida and I was carrying a gun, even if I was just sitting there watching the TV and waiting for them to hand me my pizza, the fact that I was sitting at a bar, not drinking any alcohol, not having any alcohol in my system, that's illegal.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's what I was thinking where you were going, but I 100% agree with that statement on I think that the morality behind it is that if you can safely and legally operate a car, then you should also safely and legally be able to operate a firearm. I would actually argue that if it's even more of a no-brainer because, like, I mean, I've slept carrying a firearm. Like when my daughter was born, I was carrying a gun at the time, and I spent 3 days in the hospital with that, sleeping on a gun. Ooh, it was miserable, but it was one of those. That's the safest thing. Keep it holstered, and so I've slept with a firearm on me. It's not a problem. Like, you fall asleep, you wake up, it's still there. It's not going to move if you've got a good holster and all that. And so, but you fall asleep behind the wheel of a car, that could be a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And so the very passive nature of a firearm is that you actually have to deploy it to cause a problem. And it's one of those, like, I always, the laws have nothing about knives. I carry knives with me all the time. It's not like, and I've gotten absolutely loaded with a knife on my pocket. It's not like I just suddenly just started stabbing people. Like, it's foolish. It is foolish that how anti-liquor we are towards that. Is I am totally fine with the statement, and I agree morally, not necessarily legally, but morally agree with the fact that if you are too drunk to drive, then you probably should not be carrying a firearm. And if you are carrying a firearm, you should never get yourself in the case of too drunk to drive. But
agreed.
But I'm a grown ass man, and I enjoy a drink. So if I'm going to have a beer with lunch, it's not going to do anything of note to impair me. So that's, it's nothing to worry about. And the last thing to say is that again, John is a friend of the show. He's one of the good guys, and he is running for the NRA board of directors. And I actually had to dig through my my NRA magazines because it wasn't as clearly labeled as it has been in the past with my with the ballots, and retrieve my ballots. So yeah, my ballot's in the mail by the time you hear this, John. But yeah, make sure you get your ballots out there.
Don't be a dummy round. Snap into a snap cap. Oh yeah.
Hi, and welcome to Gun Lovers and Other Strangers. In previous segments, as well as in the main show and blooper reels, we've mentioned various types of inert or otherwise non-firing ammunition. So in this segment, I'd like to talk about snap caps and dummy rounds. Items in these categories can be used for both practice and armorer work. However, their functions don't completely overlap. More people are probably familiar with snap caps, which are commonly used for dry fire practice, so I'll start there. The brand most likely to be encountered is Azoom, though there are several others. Their products are red, blue, and recently orange anodized solid aluminum turnings with a small rubber pad in the primer pocket. With the Centerfire version, they're loaded into the magazine or cylinder like live ammunition, then the firearm is cycled normally. The elastic effect of the faux primer helps cushion the firing pin to prevent overextension or damage. Another use for snap caps is with live fire failure drills. One or more of them are loaded into a magazine mixed with live rounds. When fired on the range, eventually a snap cap will wind up in the chamber, producing a click instead of a bang. This training activity generally works better if someone else loads the magazine to help preserve the mystery of when that will occur. This type of snap cap can last a long time and survive many hundreds of firings. However, they should be examined every so often for wear. particularly around the extractor groove, as frequent contact with the hardened or spring steel extractor can quickly batter the aluminum out of shape. There are other brands which are primarily made of plastic but with a metal case head. Like the A-Zoom style, these still utilize a rubber primer insert. Due to being made of a less resilient material, they should be examined for wear or breakage more often. Lately, we've seen injection molded plastic or even 3D printed snap caps on the market. These are relatively short-lived compared to the ones previously mentioned, some to the point of being nearly single-use. Rimfire snap caps are a bit different due to the firing mechanism. With this type of cartridge, the element containing the primer is also the rim for extraction. If the rim material is soft enough to cushion the firing pin, the snap cap will deform relatively easily. If made of a harder material, the firing pin may be damaged in use, though extraction will be more reliable. For this reason, snap caps for rimfire guns are more often made of plastic. They're generally sold in larger quantities, cost less, wear more quickly, and are discarded after less use. Note: never dry fire a rimfire firearm without something in the chamber. A fired empty case will do in a pinch. Even in modern, well-maintained guns, the likelihood of the firing pin hitting the edge of the chamber is high. This will often displace a small amount of metal into the chamber, which can lead to feeding and extraction issues, as the small bulge of metal created will likely interfere with the smooth passage of the case into and out of the chamber. If this damage does occur, there are two main solutions. First, using a rimfire chambering reamer to cut away the displaced metal. In addition to being a relatively expensive tool, this method can all too easily result in altered chamber dimensions. The second solution is both better and less expensive: a chamber swage. This tool forces the displaced metal back where it belongs, though it may still require a small amount of filing or stoning after use to clean up the edges. Moving on. Next up are dummy rounds, often called action-proving cartridges. These non-firing rounds are used for a different purpose than snap caps. As their technical name implies, these are used for checking all the feeding and function operations of a firearm action, not including pulling the trigger. While less useful for individuals for practice, they are indispensable for the armorer, gunsmith, or home hobbyist. While snap caps can be of any weight or balance, action-proving rounds are designed to match the specifications of live ammunition as closely as possible. This way, when run through a firearm action, they behave as a live round would without any risk of negligent discharge. Some action-proving cartridges have a plain base, without even a suggestion of a primer, while others are more akin to properly weighted and balanced snap caps. While action-proving cartridges and snap caps can be purchased, anyone with a basic reloading setup can make their own, as I did for use in classes. Starting with deprimed, cleaned, and resized cases, drill a small hole through the sides of the case and chamfer the edges. This makes it easier to visually confirm this isn't a live round. After that, put a dollop of silicone sealant in the primer pocket. Make sure some goes through into the interior of the case to decrease the likelihood of the faux primer falling out with use. Some people put a few BBs or shot pellets in the case for an audible confirmation of an inert round. Finish by seating the bullet and crimping as usual. With similar sized cartridges, such as 9mm and 380 ACP, I use a Sharpie to color in the extractor groove for easier visual identification. With use, these DIY dummy rounds will start to show wear as well, especially pistol rounds run through a Browning tilting barrel pistol. Bullet setback and dings to the extractor groove are just two of the more obvious signs of wear. When it's time to retire them, the bullets can usually be pulled and used in the next generation of dummy rounds. Assuming they haven't also been damaged, of course. Hopefully, this segment has clarified some terminology and given our listeners an additional tool for their training toolbox. Have fun and safe dry firing.
Some rimfires are not to be fired without something in the chamber. Otherwise, you risk damaging the chamber when the firing pin hits it.
That about wraps up this segment. If you have any questions for me or suggestions for future segments, or a comment on a past segment, please post them on the Assorted Calibers Podcast Facebook or MeWe pages, and Aaron or Weer'd will make sure I see them. I'm also a contributor on the Blue Collar Prepping blog, which can be found at bluecollarprepping.blogspot.com. Finally, I'm a published author, and books with my stories can be found on Amazon under the names Brena Bock and David Bock. That's all for now. Thanks for listening. I'm David, and this is Gun Lovers and Other Strangers.
I can only do that voice for a limited amount of time because it really tears up my throat. But it's so fun to do.
It's so fun to do. We miss you, Randy Savage. Oh, but Dave was mentioning the using snap caps to generate malfunction drills, and noting that it's not as organic if you know where the snap cap is hiding in the magazine, so it's better to have somebody load it for you. And I just realized, well, if you're doing like a string of fire, and if you've got 3 or 4 magazines, the more the better, and you were to take a bunch of them and load them up and really kind of not pay attention when you're loading them, so that there's some snap caps on the table, that there's some live ammo, and you're just going to load until all the magazines are full and just kind of mix them in there. And then if you were to say, either shuffle them up on the bench, or shuffle them up as you're loading them into your mag carriers, or why not throw them in a big Crown Royal bag and just fish them out as in your string of fire. Actually, that putting them in like a bag might actually be kind of cool, because not only do you have to fish out the magazine, but you also have to orient it and get into the gun. That actually might make a pretty good training drill. Just get you used to figuring out which way the bullets are pointing and getting it in there. And then you'll still get caught with surprise when you get a click instead of a bang.
I'm just imagining, and this is for humorous effect, but imagining a woman putting magazines in her purse and doing that search claw thing, the way women when they're rummaging through their purse, and they sometimes get like elbow deep trying to find something. And like, where's my magazine? Is it behind this half-eaten granola bar? No.
Yeah, but if you're the type of person that drops a spare magazine in your purse, or when I'm pocket carrying, I drop the magazine into the pocket, and I drop it next to my wallet, so that my wallet stands the magazine up so that it stays where it is. I need to, every time I pay for something, I need to readjust my magazine, but for the most part, it's exactly where I left it, and so it's pretty good. But still, the idea is the magazine's going to be floating around a little bit, and so and also, unfortunately, I live in Massachusetts, so now I've switched from a 7-round PM45 mag to a 10-round 365 mag, and while 10-round is more than 7. It's a single stack to a double stack. That 10-round mag is tiny, so it sometimes really does swim in my pockets. And so the idea that reaching in and grabbing the magazine, and it might be in a really weird orientation, is something that in theory could happen. And so training to be able to orient the magazine, index off of the cartridge, or whatever you've got to feel the magazine so that you know that it's going into the gun the right way, that's more power to you. Also, another thing that I love about snap caps, or just dummy rounds in general, I've actually got some, I bought for really, really cheap, a package of 45 ACP rounds that are just pure plastic, just bright orange plastic in the shape of a 45 ACP. And the 3D printers out there, you can probably 3D print ammo that's roughly in the shape of the ammo for your carry gun, and away you go. But when you put something that you for sure know is not ammunition into a gun and close the action, there ain't no live ammo that's going to get into the gun. And so in the event that you need to break rule 2 for some reason or another, try not to if you can't help it, because again, the safety rules exist for a reason. But if you want to put a dummy round into the chamber, that will make sure that it is completely free of ammo. It's similar to a chamber flag, but it allows your gun to be functioning. And of course, last up, Aaron, I don't think you don't have the love for oddball calibers like I do, and David's kind of got it as well. So you don't have too much weirdness in your in your ammo collection, but.
Well, that's true, but I want to point out that it isn't because I'm some sort of snob or purist. It's because I'm poor and can't afford the premium price of oddball calibers. I just go with what's common and therefore more affordable.
Yeah. Well, there's also I used to regularly shoot 7.62 Tokarev because it was really cheap, and I bought a CZ52 for like $200, and I would shoot this cheap Soviet surplus ammo out of it, and good times were had, and that went away, so now it's really expensive ammo. So
yeah, the same with my Mosin.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, I've still got a few spam cans down here, but
yeah, so do I. But I'm really reluctant to open them.
Yeah, back when
it's the prepper in me. It's like it's sealed against everything.
Mm-hmm.
I should really wait until I need it.
That is absolutely true. That's absolutely true. It was super easy to crack one of those open and just start burning through packs when there was like just literally like pillow forts of spam cans in every gun shop that you would walk into, and now no more spam cans.
I'm not sure how much of that is sanctions against Russia and how much of that is just Americans' insatiable appetite for bullets, and we shot through all the surplus.
I mean, I think we did, because even before Russia started getting sanctions against it, you know, surplus Mosins really had dried up. So I think we just got them all. I mean, it's not like they've been, well, there probably still are. Actually, I don't know. I don't know what Russians are issuing for. I mean, they've still got some medium machine guns in 7.62 by 54R, and there's the Dragunov as the designated marksman rifle. But I think most of those are kind of working off of specialty ammo, given that I forgot. Is it the I forget which one's the belt fed machine gun in 7.62, but that one is but that one would be issued ammo on links, and then the Dragunov hopefully is issuing some stuff that's a little more accurate than the trash in the spam cans.
So are you talking about the Russian machine gun that basically looks like an AK except it's fully automatic?
No, because that's I believe that one's in 7.62 by 39.
Yeah, that's like the RPK, I think.
Yeah, that's the RPK, and then there's the RPD, which is, I believe, also, let's see, our RPD is belt fed 7.62 by 39.
The PKM.
Yes, and I believe there's also a PKP that I just stumbled on, but I believe it's the PKM. Yeah, so I mean, there's still 7.62 by 54R, you know, fighting in Ukraine right now, but
on both sides, I imagine.
At both sides, well, we definitely did see Ukraine sold, or there might have been Russian. I'm not sure which side they were on, but we definitely saw people with PU Mosins actually using them as sniper rifles, which God help them. The guns that would be outfitted with the bent bolt handle and the scopes were literally just, they would test fire them just to make sure they worked, and if they happen to shoot a really nice group, those ones would get set aside. So they were perfectly reasonable for sniper rifles at the time, but that was what, 70 years ago. So yeah,
80, I think.
Yeah, probably. And so I don't know what how the ammo is getting out to the people who are using the various stuff, but I don't think it's the old spam cans anymore. Certainly not the spam cans with the stripper clips.
Yeah, 1939 was 86 years ago.
Yeah, that was a while.
Wow.
Wasn't that the Civil War?
I feel like all the maymays, the the Saving Private Ryan guy rapidly aging, SpongeBob getting in a grave and pulling the dirt over him. It's just... Cause, gosh, I remember when World War II was 40 years ago and Vietnam was 20 years ago.
You know who's younger than us, Aaron?
I really hate the way you phrased that, and I refuse to answer that question.
It's probably not all of them. I think we have a wide range of ages of our listeners. But I say that because I want to thank you. Thank you so much to listening to our show. We really appreciate you being out there. And we got to give special thanks. Have to give special thanks to our supporters on Patreon. To become a Patreon patron, go to patreon.com/Assorted Calibers Podcast to sign up. Patrons get early release of the podcast. Plus, they can get bonus content like the ACB blooper reels, the ACB film tracks, and the ACB mag dump.
And please remember to rate us on Apple Podcasts and Pocket Casts, subscribe to us on the platform of your choice, and share the show with your friends, both online and off.
I got a blog. It's weerdworld.com. That's weerdworld.com. And hear me weekly on Handgun Radio on the Firearms Radio Network.
So when I'm not being a reclusive swamp witch, you can get more from me at Linktree/Aaron Paulette. That's linktree.ee/Aaron Paulette, all one word.
And thanks to Nate Spencer for our music.
I'm the birthday girl, and he's not. Our natal celebrations are assorted, and so's our podcast. Happy birthday to me, everyone. Good night.
Happy birthday, Aaron.